Hello, I'm Louise and I'm here to share some ideas with you, to give you some new ideas to stimulate your thinking, to share some new perspectives. We all have the ability to transform and improve our lives through a shift in our thoughts and beliefs. This video presents ideas and practices for healing and enriching one's life. At the heart of this approach is the importance of self-love, self-acceptance, forgiveness, and letting go of past limitations. The underlying message is that our thoughts and beliefs create our reality, and by choosing positive mindsets, we can cultivate lives of greater joy, fulfillment, and well-being. The content also provides specific exercises, such as affirmations in front of a mirror, to help listeners practically apply these principles. The aim is to empower people with the understanding that they have the innate capacity to change and uplift their lived experience. Let us know and affirm together that we are open and receptive to new ideas and to new ways of looking at life. I've often thought how beneficial it would be if these subjects could be taught in school from the very first grade. Think how helpful it would have been if, as a child, you were taught how to think and how to use your mind, and how to have self-esteem and self-worth, and how to have loving relationships, and how to be a good parent, and how to manage your finances. Just think how wonderful it would be to have a whole generation of adults who knew these things and manifested these truths. Were you taught any of this as a child? I think not. So let's share some of these ideas now, because it's never too late to learn. This is always the right moment. You see, I believe that life is really very simple. What we give up, we get back. And what we believe about ourselves becomes true for us. Our thinking creates our experiences. There is a law of thinking like everything else, like all of nature. There is a universal energy or law of mind or subconscious mind, whatever you want to call it. But to me it means the power that is within me and around me transforms my thoughts into experiences. You see, I believe that we are all responsible for everything in our lives. Every thought we think and every word we speak is creating our experiences, our future. And it's almost as though every time you think a thought or you speak a word, that universal intelligence or energy is listening or responding to what you are thinking or believing or saying, without judgment or criticism, totally accepting us at our own value. Whatever we choose to believe becomes true for us. You see, when we are little, we learn what to think about ourselves and what to believe about life from the adults around us. And when we grow up, we have a tendency to recreate in our emotional life the emotional environment we had as a child. Now, this is not good or bad or right or wrong. It just means that is what we believe to be true for us. And we also have a tendency to treat ourselves the way our parents treated us. We scold and punish ourselves in the same way. You can almost hear the words if you listen. And we love and praise ourselves in the same way if we were loved and praised as children. We also have a tendency to create relationships in our personal lives that were either the relationships we had with our mothers or with our fathers, or that they had between them. Think about how many times you've had a relationship in your life that was like your parents, either your boss or your lover or your husband or wife. This is not in any way to blame our parents, because we're all victims of victims, and nobody can teach us anything that they don't know. If you were raised in a family where there was great anger, then you are most likely to be an angry person yourself, or you're frightened of anger. If you were raised in a fearful family, then no doubt you look at life through fearful eyes. Besides, You see, I believe that we choose our parents. I think we decide to incarnate upon this planet at particular points in time and space. And we come here because it's like a classroom. We have lessons to learn. You have your lessons and I have my lessons. And so before we come each time, I believe we choose our sex, we choose our color, we choose our country. And then we look around for the perfect set of parents that will mirror the lessons and patterns we came to work on. We choose these people as the perfect mirror for our work. Then most of us, when we grow up, have a tendency to point our fingers at our parents and say, "You did it to me. It's all your fault." But really, if we're all responsible for everything in our lives, then there's no one to blame. All is in perfect, divine right order. And we are all doing our best according to the understanding, awareness, and knowledge that we have. Our point of power is always in the present moment. We create our future by our thoughts and actions of today. And we can know that no person, no place, and no thing has any power over us. We create all our situations and all our circumstances by our thinking, feeling patterns. And then we usually give away our power by blaming others when things do not go the way we want. Is this true for you? We all have things we believe and ideas about ourselves. Now, which one of these two ideas could be true for you? People are out to get me, or everyone is always helpful? If you really believe that people are out to get you, then you're going to have those sorts of circumstances in your life. However, if you choose to change that belief to everyone is always helpful, then you will find that wherever you go in life, people are there to help you. Now, wouldn't it be better to think that way? We all have a lot of foolish ideas about life and what we believe about ourselves. And we have so many rigid rules about how life should be lived. But you see, we can't really do anything about the past. That's all done now. And everything you have experienced in your life up to this moment, you have created by your thoughts and your feelings and your beliefs of yesterday, last week, last month, last year, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, however far you go back. However, I repeat, the point of power is always in the present moment, which means that what you are choosing to begin to think right here and right now is going to create tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. The past has no power over us. The point of power is in this present moment, and we can begin to be free right here and right now. We do choose our own thoughts. We may not think so, but we do. It seems to me that almost everyone on this planet, myself included, and everyone I've ever worked with, is suffering from self-hatred and guilt to one degree or another. The more of it we have, the less our life works. And the less of it we have, the better our life works. It's like the bottom line for almost everyone that I know is, I'm not good enough. And we often add to that belief, and I don't do enough. And I don't deserve. Now, if we have a very strong belief in our subconscious mind, which to me is right here in the gut, that I'm not good enough and I don't deserve, then it's going to be extremely difficult for us to create a life that really works in all categories. Now you see, no matter what the circumstances, we are only dealing with a thought. I don't believe in giving power to outer effects. We may think that being broke is the problem. I see this as the outer effect of an inner problem. It's the inner thought patterns which create these effects. I have discovered that patterns of resentment and criticism and fear and guilt cause more problems in our lives than anything else. Even on a physical level, resentment that is held for a long time and literally eats at the body can become cancer. Criticism that's indulged for a long time can also lead to conditions like arthritis. And if you look at arthritic hands, you can almost see the criticism in them. Fear can contribute to anything from baldness to poor feet. And guilt always creates pain. Guilt seeks punishment, and punishment creates pain. So if someone comes to me with is in chronic pain, I know they're dealing with old guilt patterns. Love and joy and forgiveness are the big healers. They all come from the heart. The heart represents love, and the blood in the body is joy. So a normal, healthy heart lovingly pumps joy throughout the body, nourishing all the cells and organs, creating a loving, joyous atmosphere for the cells to do their work in. If a heart has lost its ability to express love and joy, the forgiveness will open the door. Most of our problems come from blaming others, from not taking responsibility for ourselves. And as I said, if it is true that we are all responsible for everything in our lives, then there's no one to blame, not even ourselves. And every outer experience is only a mirror of our inner thought patterns. Now, this may be a new way of looking at life, because most people like to think that it's all their fault. It's the economy, or it's a husband or a wife or a boss, or it's because we don't have money, or it's whatever. But really, all those things out there are mirrors of what we think and believe inside. For instance, if everyone is always criticizing you, if you're a person that goes around saying, everybody's always criticizing me, then what I want you to realize is that it's your pattern to be criticized. Somewhere inside of you, and you may not be aware of this, there is a belief, and it probably comes from your childhood, that you deserve to be criticized. And so because of your belief and because of your pattern, you pull people into your life who are critical. And sometimes you can even attract people who normally are not critical, but because they are with you and the vibrations that you're giving out, you will pull the criticism out of them. The other thing about this is, if people criticize you a lot, it's quite possible that you are very critical. And because what we give out comes back to us, then the criticism you're giving to other people, or perhaps to yourself, is being reflected by the people around you. So one of the first things that I like to do with people when there is a problem is to have them begin to say, I am willing to change the pattern in my consciousness that is creating this condition. I'm going to repeat that because it's very important. When you have a problem you wish to change, begin by saying to yourself, I am willing to change the pattern in my consciousness that is creating this condition. This simple sentence begins to get things moving. The universal power, the universal energy, the law of lines, your subconscious mind is constantly responding to every thought you think and every word you speak. So the moment we make the smallest shift in consciousness, our experience begins to change. It's your pattern, it's my pattern. We all have patterns we're working with. And as I said, most of the patterns we have come from the time we were 3 to 5 years old. These are our beliefs about life, our life scripts. However, we can change our attitudes towards the past and these life scripts. We are never stuck. It's really very foolish to punish ourselves in the now because of some hurt in the past. To be hurt once is one thing, but then to continuously punish ourselves because of it is very sad and very unfulfilling. It's important that we dissolve resentment now, because it can cause so many problems in the future. I've often said that to people. Do it before we're under the threat of the surgeon's knife. You see, then we have to deal with panic too. It's much easier to do it now. We have a choice of choosing to be a helpless victim and really believing it's all hopeless. And if we do, the universe will support us in that belief. And then all we do is go down the drain. Can you see how powerful we are? Our thoughts create our experiences. If I were to think that I'm unlovable, then I will be lonely for the rest of my life because I will prove my beliefs. However, if I were to change that belief into thinking that I am always surrounded by love and my life is full and rich, then that is what my life will become. My life will have to become a mirror of my inner experiences. So one of the things we want to do is to begin to release the pain of the past, to let it go, and to be willing to forgive. Do you know the Course in Miracles says that all illness comes from a state of non-forgiveness, and that whenever we are ill, we need to look around to see who it is we need to forgive. Now, this does not necessarily mean condoning poor behavior, because I agree there are many people who behave poorly. Forgiving means to release our stuff on it and let ourselves be free and the other person be free. We understand that the people who mistreated us are also in pain, that they are doing the best they can, coming from the knowledge and awareness and understanding that they have at that particular point in time and space. I've learned over the years that there is only one thing to teach, and that is love. I teach people to love themselves in the here and now as they are. Self-approval and self-acceptance in the now are the keys to positive changes, and this means no self-criticism. In order to change our life on the outside, we must change inside. At least be willing to change ourselves. You don't have to know how to do this. Just be willing. We'll work on the hows. Remember, and I'm going to say this often, every thought we think and every word we speak is being responded to by the universal energy. So the moment we say we're willing, it's amazing how the universe begins to help us. It brings us what we need. You see, there is a part of you that is ready to make an enormous change, and this is why you have created me in your life. With the use of this tape and the ideas I'm sharing with you, you have the opportunity to go over and over this tape, and each time you do, you're going to find a new idea to work with. And each time you do, you're going to look deeper into yourself, and quite the contrary to what you may have believed in the past, you are going to find incredibly beautiful treasures within you. First of all, we need to figure out what the problem is. Oh, I know. You think you know the problem. You don't care for the weight of your body, or you have an illness, or you can't get your money act together, or you're lonely, or you have a relationship that's not working, or you don't like your job, or you want to do something very different, or many things. But to me, these are all outer effects of an inner thought pattern that is creating them. And if we spend our time just looking at the outer effects and working with those, the moment we fix one, we'll create another one. Because the inner belief is still there and saying that we don't deserve on some level. Now, it's safe to look within, and let's do it together. What I'd like you to do now is to pick up your pen and paper or notebook, and on the top of the page, I want you to write, "I should." And then I want you to finish that sentence in at least a half a dozen ways. Turn the tape off now and do that. And when you're finished, come back and we'll continue. Write "I should" on the top of the page, and then finish it at least 6 or 7 times. All right, now that you have your list made,
What I would like you to do is to read off each one on the list by itself, saying, I should. And then my question to you is, why? This is not to make you wrong in any way, but just to have you look at something in a different way. So you may say, I should get up early in the morning. My question is, why? And then I want you to look inside yourself to find the answers. Do this with each should on your list. If you can do this exercise with a partner, even better. When you're finished with the list and made a note of your answers so that you remember them, then come back to me and we'll go further. I believe that should is one of the most awful words in the English language, because every time we use the word should, we are in effect saying wrong. Either you were wrong, or you are wrong, or you're going to be wrong. And I don't think we need to be made wrong. I think we need to be right, or at least come from a position of choice, because all of life is choice, and we want to be aware of that. So I would like to take the word should and put it in the wastebasket, or throw it in the fire, or in the trash, or whatever you want to do. Remove it from your vocabulary forever, and replace it with the word could, because could gives us choice. Now, it is true that sometimes it might be better for us to do something, but basically we still have choice, and if we don't do it, at least we're not wrong. So what I want you to do now with this exercise is to reread your should list one at a time, only this time I want you to say, if I really wanted to, I could. If I really wanted to, I could get up early in the morning. And then my question to you is, so why don't you, or why haven't you? And again, this is not to make you wrong, but to let you look at your shoulds and see how you really feel about them. So again, you can turn the tape off for a few moments and go through this process. If I really wanted to, I could. And so why haven't you? And when you're finished, come back. Now tell me, what did you learn? You know, most of us are so strict about our shoulds. There's such rigid rules in our lives. And most of them have to do with things that we either don't want to do, or we don't like to do, or are not us. And we find often when we go over this should list that we've been angry at ourselves for years because we don't do something that we don't want to do to begin with, or it was never our idea, or it was someone else's should. Perhaps the reason you've not done something on your should list is because you were afraid to do so. Now, instead of being bad, we find that you were only frightened. And this is a very different issue to work with. See, I like to take things off the should list. In fact, I like to remove them completely. What we can do is have them be choices. We could do them if we really wanted to. And if we're not doing them, then we probably don't want to do them, and we don't have to do them. So let's not try. Let's not berate ourselves. Let's not belittle ourselves for it anymore. This one little tiny exercise can show us so much about ourselves. So what can be dropped now from your should list? The next thing we want to do is to see where we are on the ladder of self-love. Now, I'm not talking about vanity and arrogance, because that is not love. That's a form of fear. I am talking about respect and acknowledgement for this beautiful being that we are. What we want to look at this point is how we do not love ourselves. And we do this by scolding ourselves, by criticizing ourselves, by creating pain for ourselves, emotional and physical. We don't love ourselves by mistreating our bodies. Sometimes we misuse food or alcohol or drugs. Sometimes we don't love ourselves by believing that we are unlovable, or by procrastinating, or choosing people that mistreat us. And sometimes we don't love ourselves by creating debt and burden. And sometimes Well, we all have so many ways. What are your ways of not loving yourself? Think about that. Make a note of it. You could again turn off the set and make a list of the ways that you do not love yourself. Any denial of our good is not loving ourselves, and we can do that in so many different ways. You know, I once had a client who wore glasses and often wore contact lenses, and we weren't even working to improve her vision, but we were working to release some old pattern in her life that was really limiting her. And one day we had a big breakthrough, and the next day when she got up and she put on her contact lenses, they were bothering her. So she took them out and her vision was absolutely clear. She could see everything perfectly. And she spent the whole day saying, I don't believe that, I don't believe that, I don't believe it. And the next day, she was back to wearing her lenses. You see, the universe will back up whatever we say. And when good comes into our life and we deny it, this is an act of not loving ourselves, and we literally push it away. Sometimes we have a partner who's tired or grouchy, and we think that something's wrong with us. Or our marriage ends, and we believe it's all our fault, and that we're not good enough. Or we have 1 or 2 dates with somebody and they never call again, and again we think something is wrong with us. Sometimes we're afraid to ask for a raise, or our bodies may not match the latest fashions, and we think we're not good enough. Or we don't make the sale, or we don't get the part, and we think we're not good enough. Or we may have a fear of intimacy, and so we wind up having no sex or anonymous sex. How do you express your lack of self-esteem? Think about it. It's not that we're wrong or bad people. It's just that we're looking at what we'd like to change. And we all have things about us that could be changed if we want to make our lives work better. When we were little tiny babies, we knew the perfection of our being. We knew how wonderful we were. You look at any tiny baby and you see how wonderful they are. They're full of love and they're full of life, and they ask for what they want and they express their feelings freely. When a little baby is angry, not only do you know it, the entire neighborhood knows it. And yet, 2 minutes later, their smile can light up a room because they express and it's over. And they always live in the now. And they reach out and ask for what they want. They're fabulous little babies. And they love their bodies from the top of their head all the way to the tip of their toes. They have no shame and no guilt. And they're not into comparison. And each one of us was like that. And somewhere along the line we lost it. We listened to other frightened or angry people and believed what they told us. Where did you lose your love for yourself? All right, what I'd like you to do now is to pick up your hand mirror, and I want you to look into your own eyes and say, I love and accept you exactly as you are. I want you to do this now. Go ahead. I love and accept you exactly as you are. Just notice your reactions. How do you react to doing this? How do you feel? What's coming up? Is it an easy exercise to do? Do you feel foolish? Does it seem hard to do? Does it make you feel angry? What sort of reactions are you having? I can remember when I used to criticize myself all the time when I looked in the mirror. I remember the endless hours I used to spend plucking my eyebrows to make myself barely acceptable. And I also remember I used to be frightened to look into my own eyes. Are you like that? Is this a difficult exercise? Because to me, this is one of our core issues, how we feel about ourselves. It's not important what's happening out there. It's not the size of our hips or our bank account or the fact that we have a lover or not, but how we feel about ourselves. Loving the self, to me, is the most important thing we can do. And this begins, as I said before, with no criticism. Do you criticize yourself? Oh, I've heard all the answers. Well, of course. I mean, how am I going to change if I don't? Well, if I don't do that, I won't be able to motivate myself. Doesn't everyone? Or I've always criticized myself. Well, we're not talking about everyone. We're talking about you. Everybody has their own answers and their own reasons. Why do you criticize yourself? What's wrong with you? In fact, at this point, I'd like you to stop and give yourself a little time to think and make a list of all the things that you think are wrong with you. And when you finish that, come back and we'll go on. Make a list of all the things you think are wrong with you. You will get the most out of this tape and the work we do if you allow yourself to take the time to do the exercises between the exclamations. Now, let's talk about your list. Think about your list. Is it full of too short, too tall, too young, too old, too stupid, whatever? It always seems to be a lot of truths. And look at this list and notice, does it go with your should list? Are the items pretty much the same? See, it sounds to me like you're saying, I'm not good enough. And here we are again at the very bottom one, not loving ourselves. And this to me is the only real problem we have. Now, the next question is, where does this come from? Where do we get those ideas? How did we go from the perfection of a tiny baby who knew how wonderful it was to the feeling of being unlovable and unworthy and not good enough? You know, I like to think of us all as being like a rose. If you think of this flower, this gorgeous rose, from the time it is the tiniest little bud, as the petals begin to open, till it becomes a full blossom, till the last petal falls, a rose is always beautiful, always perfect, and ever-changing. And this is the way we are. We are always perfect wherever we are in life. And we want to see ourselves that way, in the here and now. Yes, of course there are things we want to change. We all have things we want to alter in our lives. But it doesn't mean that we're bad people. We don't have to come from the space of being wrong. So in order to release ourselves from the belief we have about ourselves that are limiting, we want to examine the past. We want to see what these blocks are. If we don't see them, there's no way we can remove them. So we look and we see what they are, what are the beliefs, what are the concepts, what are the ideas that are limiting us, and then we remove them. To me, it's rather like mental house cleaning. All of us have to clean house periodically. Some of us do it more often than others, but there comes a time when you really must clean the house, or it becomes impossible to live in. And I think it's the same thing with our mental houses. We need to periodically go through and do some house cleaning and toss out the old rubbish or the things that no longer suit us or no longer fit us. And we want to polish up those ideas that are positive and good and that nourish us and use them more often. You know, it really can be almost as easy as scraping bits of food off a plate into the trash after a meal. But you wouldn't go into yesterday's garbage to make tonight's meal. But how often do we go into yesterday's mental garbage to create tomorrow's experiences? The next exercise I'd like you to do is make a list of all the things your parents said were wrong with you, all the negative messages you got. Again, turn the tape off and give yourself a bit of time to really let things come up, things that were said or implied about your body, things that were said about your abilities, things that were said about love and money and your creative talents, and things like that. And of course, I know that your parents also said some wonderful things to you. But what we're really looking for are the negative messages that are probably still sitting in your subconscious mind. At this point, when I do this exercise in a workshop, it's interesting how the energy of the room usually begins to go down and people start to get very depressed. Now, you don't have to do that. You can look at this very objectively and just see what the messages are. Make your list of negative messages that came from your parents, verbal or implied, and do that now and then come back. All right, I want you to look at that list of negative messages, all the things that you heard as a child, because they're all sitting there in your subconscious mind, unless you've done something to release them and let them go. Try to be objective about it. And when you see something that creates a feeling within your body, let yourself say, oh, so that's where this belief came from. And realize that you're finding a treasure. Because if you don't know where this came from, you'd just be operating on automatic for the rest of your life and wondering why things aren't working for you, or wondering why you're always having the same experience. Well, I know why you repeat medical experiences. You're creating them because of some belief in here, and that belief came to you when you were very little. Not only from your parents, but now if you'll dig a little deeper, you'll find that it came from other sources too. So again, I want you to continue this list of negative messages and look for the other negative messages you heard as a child, mostly before the age of 10. Things that you heard from your relatives, from teachers, from friends, from the authority figures, from the church. Take some time to do this, and as you're doing it, notice your body. Notice how your body is reacting and feeling. Make your list now of negative messages from other sources. You see, these messages that you have written down are the very thoughts that make you feel not good enough. If we had a 3-year-old child here in the middle of the room, and each one of us started to yell at the child and tell it how no good it was and how stupid it was and it shouldn't do this and it should do that and how dare it make a mistake and look at the mess it made, and maybe we hit that child a few times, what are we going to have? We're going to have a little child that cowers in the corner and behaves like a goody-goody. Or we're going to have a child that tears up the room. They will go one of two ways, but there is no way we're ever going to know the potential of this child. However, if we take that same little child and we tell it how wonderful it is and how much we love it and how beautiful it is and that we just love the way it does things and we think it's so creative and that it's okay for this child to make mistakes while it learns, then the potential that can come out of this child will blow your mind. Now, each one of us is always working with the 3-year-old child within us. And most of us, unfortunately, spend our time yelling at the child, and then we wonder why our lives don't work. Maybe your room is treated as a child. Maybe you were treated very badly, and that's sad. But if you're mistreating yourself in the here and now, then this is sadder still. So you have quite a list of negative messages now. Let's look at this list. Does this list go with your other list of what's wrong with you? And maybe even with your shirt list? I have a feeling it does. Our life scripts are based on our early messages. And until we can find those messages, we can't change our lives. But remember, all that is finished. It's over. It's in the past. And if we just go into blame, then we stay victim. And that's no fun. And you get to stay stuck in your problem. Blame keeps the problem. It keeps us stuck in the problem. And understanding lets us rise above it. The past cannot be changed. And the future is shaped by our current thinking. Our freedom in the here and now depends on our understanding our parents, having understanding and compassion for them instead of just blame. We ought to know that, like us, they were doing the best they could at that point in time and space with the understanding and awareness and knowledge that they had. Blame is not taking responsibility for ourselves and our own creative power. You see, they were just as frightened and scared as we are, and they could only teach us what they had been taught. What do you know about your parents' childhood before the age of 10? Think about it for a while. How much do you know? And if you don't know much and your parents are still alive, try to find out. Not in an accusing way, but just ask them, what was it like to be a little child? What was it like when you were 5 years old? And if your parents are gone and you can't find out from them, then let yourself imagine what it could be like. What kind of a childhood would your parents have had to have them be the sort of people they were when you were little? Understanding creates compassion, and so you can't free yourself until you free them, and you can't forgive yourself until you forgive them. Now, perhaps you also have brothers or sisters. If they are older, they may have been like gods to you, and you may have taken very seriously the things that they said. Sometimes they may have considered you a nuisance, and you got the idea you weren't good enough. Teachers often say things that shape our lives. I remember when I was in the 5th grade, and the teacher called me up and said, "What do you want to do in life?" And I said, "Oh, I want to be a dancer." And she said to me, "Oh, let's leave that to the shorter girls. Tall girls can't dance." And I thought, oh dear, and I put away all my dancing aspirations in my pocket and literally didn't take them out till I was well over 40. School also creates so many interesting beliefs. For instance, if we think about tests and grades, were you really aware as a child that the tests you took and the grades you were getting had nothing to do with your self-worth? That they were showing you only how much you knew about a particular subject, and that's all. And most of us go through life reacting to the fear that we had as children when we had to take a test. We thought it had to do with whether we were good enough or not. When you were a child, your friends were just as mixed up as you were and had their own misinformation and may have taught you much nonsense, or they may have said things that were very cruel. You had neighbors. What did the neighbors say? What did they think? Were you afraid of them? Were they friends? Then you think of the ads on TV and in the magazines. How did they shape how you feel about yourself? There are so many products that are sold on the basis of trying to teach you that you're not good enough or acceptable enough unless you use their product. Do you buy into that? Or do you see their gain? See, our old messages of limitations come from many places, and it always comes down to, where did we get the messages that we're not good enough? And then, of course, the next thing is how to transcend our limitations, no matter what they told us. See, it doesn't matter what other people say about us. It's how we react to it and what we're choosing to believe about ourselves. You know, Gerald Jampolsky has written a couple of wonderful books. In Teach Only Love, he said something I thought was brilliant. He said, if you want to increase your spiritual growth as quickly as possible, or if you want to get out of a problem as quickly as possible, choose to think only happy thoughts. You see, you can only think one thing at a time. You can spend your time thinking about joyous experiences, you can love yourself, or you can spend your time doing what I call griping and grunging, thinking about the past and all the failures and all the things that went wrong, and how you're not good enough, and how things may go wrong in the future is a sure way to continue to have failures. But that's not the way to create a wonderful life. Loving yourself and thinking joyful, happy thoughts is the quickest route you can take. So the next question is, now that we've looked at all these things, now that we have this list of all the things that are wrong with us, and the list of all the things our parents said were wrong with us, and the neighbors and the friends and the church and the authority figures, the next question is it true? Look at your list. What do you still believe is true for you? Is it really true? And the answer to me is both yes and no. All these negative things are true if you believe them about yourself, and they're not true if you don't believe them. And you can tell what you believe just by looking at your experiences. If you have a lack of finances or you really can't get your money act together, then there must be a belief within you of burdens and debts. If you're a lonely person, then there must be a belief in there that says, nobody loves me, or I'm unlovable. If you're ill a lot, then you must have crippling thoughts of some sort. You may not consciously be aware of these thoughts, but if you look to your circumstances, you can begin to see what kind of thoughts you must have. So think of all the things in your life that are not working, because that's what we're concentrating on now. This is what we want to change. And ask yourself, what kind of thoughts could be creating these conditions? Could they be some of the things on your list? Some of the beliefs that we have are very positive and nourishing, and we want to keep those beliefs. We want to use them often because they work for us. And some of the things we believe are no longer appropriate. And some of the things we believe were never true. They were someone else's fears. All those things on your list were other people's opinions. So the question you have to ask yourself is it true? And you'll get the answer by looking around you at your circumstances. You see, our circumstances always show us what we believe. I remember once when I was a little girl in school, and this memory is so vivid for me because it's so typical of my beliefs about myself at the time. I remember that we had a party in school, and it was a gala affair, and everybody brought a lot of party stuff and things like that. And there was lots of cake, and there was so much cake that when the teacher was cutting it, several children got several pieces of cake. And yet, when it was my turn and I came up for a piece of cake, and of course with my belief system, I was last. There was no cake left. And all the children who had cake all the time and who believed that it was their right to have cake were having lots of cake. And I, who never had cake and believed that I was not good enough and did not deserve any, there wasn't one piece left for me. It's a perfect example of how we create our circumstances by our beliefs. You see, if you grew up in a family where you were told all the time that it's all your fault, then you're going to go around feeling guilty most of your life and probably saying, I'm sorry all the time, or you will manipulate others through guilt. If you have a belief that nobody loved you, then you're either going to have no romances or you'll probably have very short romances. If we go around saying, well, that's the way I am, or that's the way life is, that's expressing a belief. And perhaps it came from other people's opinions. It's not true for us, or it is true for us, depending on how we accept it. Stop accepting their limitations. We always have another way of looking at life. You know, many people get up in the morning, and if it's raining, they look out the window and say, oh, what a lousy day. Well, it isn't a lousy day, it's a wet day. But if we choose to believe it's a lousy day, then that's what we'll have, because we will create it. If we choose to believe it's a wet day, then we'll put on the appropriate clothing and do what we do on rainy days. There is no good or bad, there is no right or wrong, except that we make it so. And you know, every culture on this planet has different rules about those things. It's what we believe that makes things right or wrong or good or bad. And again, it's the old thing, what we give out, we get back. and usually in gumble. We want to begin to shift our beliefs today, to be willing to allow the changes to happen. The point of power is always in the present moment. And all these old things, these lacks, these limitations, these beliefs, can return to the nothingness from whence they came. They came out of nothing, and they can go back to it. You are the power. No person, no place, no thing has any power over you. I can give you lots of good advice and lots of wonderful new ideas, but if you choose not to accept them, then you're in control, for you have the power. You are the only person that thinks in your mind, and you create your experiences. And just for this moment, I want you to catch the thought you're thinking right now and ask yourself, is it negative, or is it positive, or is it neutral? Do you want this thought to create your future? Now, because we think so quickly, and the thoughts just go whizzing through our minds, it's not always so easy to begin changing our thoughts. You can start by editing your speech. Begin to listen to what you say, and don't say anything that you don't want to become true for you. There are literally billions of thoughts that you can think, and infinite numbers of things that you can say. Make these be nourishing thoughts. Pick thoughts that create nourishing experiences for you. Don't waste time thinking thoughts that create problems for you and then try to fix the problems. That to me is foolish and a waste of time. One of my very early teachers used to say often, "There is not something to do, there is something to know." Because truly, when we change our thinking, we change our experiences. All right, so what do we do now? Well, I think we can decide to change. That, to me, is the most important thing now. Oh, we can throw up our hands in horror and give up, or get angry, or feel that it's all helpless and hopeless. But these are old and useless ways of handling things. If we think, oh, it's hopeless, so why try, because at least I can handle the pain, and I know what that is, well, that's just getting stuck and staying in the same old place. And you certainly have the choice of doing that, but you don't have to. I'm getting angry about circumstances. Well, to me, that's like sitting in a corner with a dunce hat on. You know, something happens and we get angry, and something else happens and we get angry, and we don't do anything about it. Do you know that people who commit suicide do so because they won't change their minds? They believe that life is only one way, and they don't want to look in another way or see another viewpoint. They refuse to believe there are other possibilities, and so they leave the planet instead. Getting angry or upset continuously because things that aren't working, again, is sort of foolish and a wasted energy. What is really better is for you to ask yourself, how am I creating so many situations to be angry or upset at? And then sit down and really give yourself a chance to think about that. What could I be doing or believing that is creating this? And again, this is not to make you wrong, but just to let you look at what could be happening. When we start this work, I like to think of it very much like the end of a Thanksgiving dinner. You know, you've had all this wonderful Thanksgiving dinner and everybody's eaten much too much. And then it's time to go into the kitchen and clean up the turkey pan. And there it sits, all crusty and burnt, and it looks a mess. So the first thing you do is to put in some hot water and soap, and you let it soak. And then after it's soaked for a while, you start to scrape it, and all these bits come up, and then it really looks a mess. And if you didn't know better, you'd think that the pan would always be disgusting. However, if you keep going, after a little while, you're going to have a nice, clean turkey pan. Our consciousness is very much like that. When we begin to do this work, we go in and we start to clean our mental turkey pan. And sometimes things get worse before they get better. We want to know that it's okay if that happens and to just flow with it. I think mirror work is very important, and the more we can do it, the more we can reflect to ourselves where we are and what we need to do. So keep looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, I am willing to change, and I am willing to release the resistance. I am willing to change, and I am willing to release the resistance. Now all of us have to deal with what I call resistance to change. And we all have resistance, because on some level, we want everything and everyone out there to change, but we all want to have to change ourselves. And yet, changing ourselves is the very thing we must do in order to change our lives. So awareness is our next step. We must become aware of what it is that we believe. Otherwise, we don't know what to change. Our first reaction to a new awareness about ourselves is often resistance. And that's all right, because any reaction is good. It means the change is already in process. Let yourself notice how you react so that you are aware of what's going on. Our lessons are not necessarily easy. If they were easy, they wouldn't be lessons. It takes time and effort to learn what we need to learn. So don't demand instant change. Let yourself do it step by step. It will get easier as you go along. Too often we get impatient and we want to do things right now. Impatience is only resistance to learning. It means you want the goal without going through the process. You know, we can sit here and say, I want to be in the other room. And we can even demand and insist that we are in the other room right now. But we don't want to make the effort of getting up and going one step at a time in order to get to the other room. And we can sit here for days and keep yelling and insisting we want to be in the next room, and nothing will happen except that we get frustrated. However, if we make the effort and take the steps, no matter how small, one by one, before you know it, we will be there. Keep noticing what is going on in your body and what form your resistance may be taking. It's fascinating to watch how the mind works and learns, and the thing we resist the most is often that which we most need to learn. If you keep saying, I can't or I won't, you're probably referring to a lesson that is important to you. Think for a moment. What do you think you came to this planet for? What is your lesson? What did you come to learn? And what did you come to teach? I do not believe you came here to be miserable or to be unfulfilled. I believe you came here to be fulfilled and to give of yourself to others. We are all teachers and students. We are learning and we are teaching. You could ask yourself that question before you go to sleep tonight. What did I come here to learn? And what did I come here to teach? Let's look now into how we resist, because all of us resist change in some ways. We have so many ways to do this. There are many nonverbal ways. All sorts of things, like we could leave the room, begin to do something else, start flipping through a magazine, or pretending we don't hear. We also use assumptions, such as it won't do any good, or they won't let me, or they won't understand. Or we may have beliefs that are part of our resistance, like it's not done, or I can't do that, or it's too much work. And then, of course, there's always them. We use them as our excuse for resistance. We give our power to them, and we say things like, my husband or wife won't let me, or the stars or the cards are against it, or my doctor says no, or they have to change before I can, or it's against my religion or my beliefs. Or we put our changes on hold by saying, I'll do it later, or the time isn't right, or after I move. We might use fear as our resistance. I might get hurt, or what will the neighbors think, or I would rather die first, or I'd rather be divorced first, or I'm afraid to tell my husband or wife or boss. Don't all of these excuses add up to saying, I'm really not good enough?
It's evident that the power to heal oneself and one's life lies within the realm of our thoughts and beliefs. Everyone possesses the capability to transform and enhance their lives by shifting their mindset and beliefs. Central to this journey is the importance of self-love and self-acceptance. Rather than criticizing or blaming ourselves, it's crucial to cultivate compassion and acceptance. Forgiveness, both of ourselves and others, along with letting go of past limitations, is paramount. It's essential to recognize that our thoughts and beliefs shape our reality. By choosing positive thoughts, we can manifest a more fulfilling life. Engaging in practices such as mirror work, affirming, I love and accept myself, can aid in improving self-perception and nurturing a positive self-image.